1, so it should be. Okay, so in the first problem, the x squared minus 1 is a perfect square, and that factors to x squared minus 1, factors to x plus 1, and x minus 1. So what can x not equal? So here it can't equal negative 1, and here it can't equal 1. And I already used the x plus 1 and x minus 1 over here, so we don't have to do this one. So the common denominator is x plus 1 times x minus 1. So I'm going to write the 1 down, and the x plus 1 cancels out, so I multiply by x minus 1. Write the 1 down. The x minus 1 cancels this time, so I get x plus 1. And write the 2 down, and they both cancel, so I just have the 2. So on this side, I get x minus 1 plus x plus 1. These cancel out, so I have 2x equals 2. The 1s. And so I get x equals 1. But the 1 is extraneous, so x equals 1. So I'm going to have the same common denominator on this one. So if I set this equal to 0 and this equal to 0, I get 1 and negative 1. So I'm going to write the 2 down, and the x minus 1 cancels, so I get x plus 1. I'm going to write the 3 down, and the x plus 1 cancels, and I have x minus 1. I'm going to write the 1 down, but there's nothing to cancel here, so I need both. So I'm going to get 2x plus 2 equals 3x. Yeah, sorry. And so what do I do on this side now? So x squared, what happens to the x's? I have 1 plus and 1 minus. They cancel, because this is a perfect square. So I get x squared minus 1. And if I multiply both of these by 1, it's still just x squared minus 1. But if this was a 2, it's always easier to multiply this first and then distribute the 2. Okay? I think there's one on the assignment like that. So I have x squared, so I want to move all this stuff to the x squared side. So I want to combine like terms first. So this is going to be 5x minus 1. So I'm going to subtract the 5x, and I'm going to add the 1. And these ones cancel out. And now I can't do the t-chart. Okay, give me that phone. So I can't do the t-chart because I don't have a c. So what do these two have in common? So I get x minus 5. So if I set this equal to 0 and this equal to 0, so I get 0 and 5. So neither one is a 1 or a negative, so these are both solutions. So what's the common denominator on the next one? And 6. So I'm going to write the 1 down. The x minus 1 cancels, so I get 6. I'm going to write the x down. The x minus 1 cancels, it leaves me with 6. I'm going to write the x down. The 6 cancels, so you get x minus 1. So here I have 6, here I have 6x, and I have x squared minus x. So if I combine like terms, and I'm going to move the 6, so now we can factor. So I want negative 6 and 5. 6 and negative 1. So if I set this equal to 0, I can't have 1. So what is, if I factor x minus 1 and x plus 6, so the 1 is going to be extraneous, and the negative 6 is the solution. So on the last one, I know I have an x and an x minus 1. What happens with the x squared minus x? What do they have in common? So this is x times x minus 1. So you don't need another one of those. You already have them. So I'm going to write down x minus 6. The x cancels, but I get x minus 1. I'm going to write the 1 down, but what happens? They both cancel, so I'm not multiplying by anything. Then I'm going to write the minus 1, and the x minus 1 cancel, so I get minus x. So when I multiply, what do I get on that side? Yeah? So you get minus 6x minus 1, so that gives you minus 7x, right? So I'm going to get x squared minus 7x plus 6. Now I want to move everything to the x squared side. And so if I set this equal to 0 and this equal to 0, my x can equal 0 and a positive 1. So when I factor this, you get negative 5, negative 1. So my x becomes 5 and 1. So I know the 1 goes where? So look at number 1 on your homework. So my common denominator is going to be, I need the 2x, I need the x plus 7, and then I need an x. But I already have an x, so I don't need another one. So when I write down the 1, the 2x cancels, and what do I multiply by? I'm going to write down the 3, and what cancels? So I'm going to multiply by, very good. Then I'm going to write down the negative 1, and now what cancels? Correct. I need both of these. And so the negative times the 2 is going to give me negative 2 times x plus 7. So when I distribute, I get negative 2x minus 14. And over here, I have x plus 7 plus 6x. So when I combine, I have 7x plus 7 equals negative 2x minus 14. And now what do I do? Right, you want the numbers on one side and the variable on the other. You just solve then.